And it's presented by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi. It's good to be blue.
All right, good morning. The show is brought to you by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi. It's good to be blue. The official healthcare provider of the Out of Bounds show, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi. Welcome in. Good morning. Good morning. Hope you're doing well and hope you're safe and warm. Be careful out there. We're glad to be back on. I didn't know what else to do. I'd walked around my house enough. Good hell. All right. SEC Insider Hit this morning. Brought to you by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi. It's good to be blue. It is good to be blue. Live in the Bank Plus studio. We are streaming live on the Out of Bounds radio app and the zone1059.com. You can watch the show right now on YouTube. Search Out of Bounds Sports. We started the show discussing NFL QBs. Always, because the world really revolves around Dak Prescott, we always tie it back into Dak. We assume, and I don't know if this is smart, my high school basketball coach told me to never assume, but we assume that Dak and the Cowboys are going to get a deal done. So that's why we thought it would be a good time to bring in Steve Palazzolo, NFL Insider, PFF.com, Pro Football Focus. Steve joins us on the Coors Light guest line, and Carson Wentz is traded to the Indianapolis Colts. So, Steve, how does that impact the NFC East and Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys? What happened over the weekend?
Well, I think you can put the Eagles completely into rebuild mode. You know, I think the fact that they've been forced to move on from Carson Wentz for, you know, his lack of a performance or however you want to slice that, the Eagles are rebuilding, you know, between that and a lack of cap space. So what was the easiest division in the NFL last year maybe got a little bit easier, you know, just because you don't necessarily have that security at the quarterback position for the Eagles. It leaves Jalen Hurts. Right now as the starter, the Eagles will probably look for a quarterback in the draft as well. And, you know, I think going into last season, it looked like we were wrong, but it looked like the Cowboys and the Eagles were the two best teams in the NFC East. And obviously that didn't work out and Dak got hurt. But, you know, as long as the Cowboys can bring Dak back and then make some strides in the secondary, you know, they should be the favorites in the NFC East going forward.
Wow. Okay. So we don't know what the Washington football team's going to do. I don't think we're sold on Daniel Jones with the New York Giants. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's been a little bit better than the stats would show. But again, they just have so much work to do, I think, building around him. So, yeah, major question mark still in New York. And, yes, question mark with the football team and what they're going to do at quarterback as well.
All right. And then Steve's talking about the Eagles. They draft sixth, or they do right now. I guess they could move, but we expect them to draft. Steve, your philosophy is even if let's just say they love Jalen Hurts. I have no idea if they do or don't. I do think he's capable of winning games, but at the end of the day, I don't know what he is. But even if you go, your philosophy is you draft a quarterback at number 6, even if you kind of like Hurts, because you have to have someone at that who's at least good, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the phrase I always use is uneven payouts. So, you know, if you draft a quarterback, let's say you're making a bunch of $100 bets, the quarterback, you're going to lose $100 for your bet no matter what. What's the return going to be? Well, a good quarterback, if a good defensive end brings you $1,000 on that $100 bet, a good quarterback brings you $5,000, $10,000, right? I mean, it's just exponentially more. So the draft isn't just about getting good players; it's about getting good players that are going to make a significant impact. And there's a reason why all we do is talk about quarterbacks, because it's that foundational piece, right? I mean, If you don't have one, you exhaust all options to find one. And who knows? You know, if Jalen Hurts is just okay, maybe the Eagles have a just okay season, and they're picking at 15th next year in maybe a weaker quarterback class. So I think you also have to take advantage when you have those opportunities. And it's not always about just hitting on every single quarterback pick. Nobody's going to do that, but it's like, all right, you know, Dallas stumbled into Dak. It was extremely valuable for them for a few years. So you got to keep trying, and I think the Eagles are certainly in that position.
All right, Steve Palazzolo, Pro Football Focus, PFF.com, on the Coors Light guest line, talking NFL QBs. I know you know this tidbit of information, but I want to get your reaction to it. With the trade of Carson Wentz from the Eagles to the Colts, there will now not be a single quarterback drafted in the first round from 2009 to 2016 that is still with his original team. That's 0 for 22 total. How does that happen in a league where these are all multi-billion-dollar companies, Steve, that are full of, most of them are full of smart people and who have big personnel teams who all they do is evaluate and try to figure out how to build a roster?
Yeah. So as I'm telling the Eagles, just draft a quarterback at 6. You have to. I think it's just the run of quarterbacks that we've seen in the league. Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, they're right there at that cutoff in 2017. We'll see what happens with Watson, but I think it's just the run of QBs that we've seen. What are the egregious misses along the way? Missing on Russell Wilson, maybe 2012. The fact that he wasn't a first rounder, that's one of those. All right, he should have been a first round pick, knowing what we know now. Dak probably should have been a first round pick, knowing what we know now. But I think it's just the run of quarterbacks. If you look back at the last decade, I think I say this all the time, I think there was a clear top 10, top 8 quarterbacks in the league. And not too many quarterbacks in the last 10 years have joined that list of, clearly at the top end of the league. So I think what happened was the league added a whole bunch of those mid-tier starters. They added a whole bunch of mid-level starters, and those guys are the guys that drive you crazy, right? There was a couple Super Bowl appearances in there. Cam Newton went to a Super Bowl. Jared Goff, Carson Wentz kind of led a Super Bowl team. And they can get you there in the right situation or have one of those peak seasons, but the year-to-year consistency, the week-to-week consistency just isn't there. And that has been the story of those quarterbacks from 09 to 16. And then you get to this point where you're the Rams and you're like, man, I thought Goff was the guy, but we got to move on, and he's a starting caliber quarterback. I mean, that's the bottom line. The NFL added a whole bunch of starting caliber quarterbacks, and a few teams just said, man, starting caliber is not enough for us. We got to keep moving on. And guys just didn't develop as they hoped, and that's just where it landed. But I still think teams have to keep trying, despite what that says historically, because, again, the payout, if you do find a Russell Wilson, if you do find a Deshaun Watson, the payout is just astronomical.
Okay, Steve Palazzolo, NFL insider on the Coors Light guest line. What do you make of where we are right now in the NFL? The Steelers and Roethlisberger don't look like they're on the same page. Rodgers and the Packers, Deshaun and the Texans, and Russell and the Seahawks. None of them look like they're on different circumstances, but they don't look like they're on the same page. Is that something that's always kind of been out there and happened? We just have so much access with what y'all do and the NFL Network and Twitter and so on? Or is it just the climbing and timing in the NFL? What do you make of that, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I think Tom Brady just is winning all the Super Bowls, so everybody else is mad. That's the bottom line. No, I think with Rodgers and Wilson, I think for both of those guys, it's just two high-end quarterbacks who are just competitive, and they want to win Super Bowls as well. They've both won one, they've both had it, they've both tasted it, and they're frustrated. Rodgers is frustrated because they lost in the NFC Championship back-to-back years, and Wilson's frustrated because after going to the Super Bowl in his second year and the NFC champion, or the Super Bowl in his second and third seasons, he's frustrated, right? They haven't gotten back. So to me, it's just two competitors at the top getting frustrated. It's the Texans completely just screwing up, the relationship with Deshaun Watson so far. We'll see if they can mend it. And then it's just Big Ben getting old, So, so even when you do get that really good quarterback, it doesn't make it easy, so to speak, when you have Aaron Rodgers or Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson, or even Patrick Mahomes. Those teams still have to make good team building decisions, and they have to figure out the best way, not necessarily to keep the quarterback happy, but to put them in the best position to succeed. And I think that's where we are right now, right? Wilson and Watson and Rodgers are looking around like, hey, all these other teams need quarterbacks, and we're one of the, we're a couple of the best assets in the league here. Help me out, do me some favors. And that's why I think they get a little frustrated at the top.
All right, Steve Palazzolo, PFF.com. Check out the site, Pro Football Focus, great NFL and college site. covering the game that we all talk about 12 months out of the year. He joins us on the Coors Light guest line. If you're grabbing some crawfish this week, Coors Light and crawfish, that's a winning combo. Blake?
Yeah, so, Steve, I want to build off this kind of concept of what you're talking about with needing to draft a quarterback, which I understand. But of the 22 first-rounders from 09 to 16, and even you could throw in the 3 QBs because Trubisky's gone from the Bears, it looks like. Watson should be gone from the Texans, so it would mean one, only Mahomes, out of 09 to 17 would still be on their original team.
Wow.
I found 5 that I said, okay, well, this makes sense that they were decent quarterbacks at one time or another. Stafford, Luck, Newton, Goff, Wentz. Of the rest, it's like, how do you take Tim Tebow, Josh Freeman, Blaine Gabbert, Christian Ponder, E.J. Manuel, Teddy Bridgewater? So when you look at a lot of these names and all these misses in the first round with the Cowboys, because this is the specific instance, but with the Cowboys drafting at number 10 and you have an option to keep Dak Prescott and you look at what else how the league is missed on quarterbacks even in the first round and how your division and your NFC is set up, which seems to be the weaker side of the NFL right now, how do you sit there and go, the logical decision is to go find a new quarterback? Because there's no telling you what you hit at number 10.
Yeah, so first off, a lot of those names you mentioned, the Blaine Gabberts of the world and Christian Ponders of the world, I think early part of the decade, evaluators just really missed. Like, I don't think those guys ever should have been first-round picks in general. So I think, to me, that skews the stats. Those guys Tim Tebow never should have been a first-round pick. It skews the numbers. That was legitimately one team bought in. So I think what I've said on this show before is Dallas paying Dak, even if they have reservations or whatever. I mean, look, they screwed it up along the way. They paid the wrong guys. On our podcast yesterday, we had former GM talking about not only did they pay the wrong guys, it's essentially like a $20-40 million mistake because you could have had Dak for a cheaper price when you start. That's what teams have done in the past. Is lock their quarterbacks up early. Now the other side of that is that's what the Rams did, and that's what the Eagles did, right? And they went with this old school mentality. Old school meaning like 8 to 10 years ago. Once you find a starter, you sign them, because they were so tough to find. And then all of a sudden you get buyer's remorse. If you're the Rams or the Eagles, you have to move on. So I think that played into Dallas's decision. But what we're seeing right now is just how uncomfortable it is if you have to go out on the dating scene for quarterbacks, right? Like if Dallas has to go out and date and find someone else, it's an uncomfortable world. Do I draft? Do I try to sign a free agent? Is Andy Dalton the guy? A year ago, maybe even thinking about that. So I think they're going to go back to their comfort level and say, to your point, the landscape is uneven. We know what we're getting from Dak Prescott. And if we can just continue, lock him up and build those pieces around him, we've seen him succeed. I think that is the right move for the Cowboys because that, I think he's locked into that top 10-ish, type of situation, maybe higher. Of course, in Mississippi, he's top 3. But, you have to go back to that comfort level, right? In that knowing what you're going to get versus, the indecision of being out there on the open market looking for QBs.
Okay, this is incredible, though, Steve. I mean, the QB carousel between retirements and guys hopping around, I mean, this is insane. We've never experienced this in the NFL, and we still don't. We're waiting on Breeze. He's going to retire, and we don't know what's going to happen with Roethlisberger. And then we mentioned Rodgers, Russell, and Deshaun. It's great for our business, but don't you think this is somewhat insane that this is all playing out in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, I just really think it's just the changing landscape. Again, if we're sitting here in 2015, no matter whether you're PFF, whether you're just using passer rating, whether you're just using wins, I bet we could all come to a consensus of who are the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL, who are the top 8 quarterbacks in the NFL. And I think it was pretty clear, Brady, Breeze, Rodgers, Manning, and then you had, Russell Wilson. I think Matt Ryan was up there, Big Ben, Andrew Luck when he was healthy, Phillip Rivers probably. So you have this group of quarterbacks for a consistent period of time. And when you have those guys, you're like, okay, those are my guys, right? I mean, nobody wanted to move on. There was no QB movement because those guys were with their team and they're a valuable asset, and that's it. And then I think that the Andy Dalton line that I always like to reference. There was a next chunk of teams who either had a quarterback above the Andy Dalton line, and they were like, okay, I have a starter. Let's keep him in town. I have a starter. And then there was maybe almost half the NFL had a quarterback below Andy Dalton. Like in 2013, the Chiefs were thrilled to pay Alex Smith over $100 million because their quarterback situation had been so bad for so many years.
That's incredible.
Right? I mean, and that was the landscape of the NFL. It was like as soon as a backup quarterback threw a good pass, people would be talking about, oh, is this guy worth a first-round pick? Should we trade for him? A.J. McCarron just threw a good pass as a backup. Everybody trade first-rounders for him. I mean, that was the landscape. Finding starters was tough 8 years ago, whatever that time period was, right? And I think that and if you had a starter, you tied him up. You locked him up. And now I think the top 10's not as clear, right? The Bradys of the world are getting older. Breeze is retiring. Big Ben's fallen off, right? Andrew Luck already retired. And now there's, what, 3 guys? There's 4 guys? So the fact that Deshaun Watson's talked about in trade rumors, that's just Houston screwed it up. But the rest of those guys I still think are staying put, Rodgers and Wilson and all that. But the rest of the NFL is saying if you have a quarterback who's a good starter, they're like, oh, man, I wonder if I can get a little bit better. I wonder if I could just, is there something better out there? I like my guy, but is there something better? And then there's other teams who still don't really have a guy like the Bears. The Bears would probably kill for a Jared Goff level quarterback based off what they had. So the landscape has changed, and I think there's a lot of starting caliber quarterbacks around the NFL, but not this clear elite 6, 8, or 10 guys like we had over the last decade or so.
All right. Steve Palazzolo, Pro Football Focus, PFF.com. He joins us on the Out of Bounds show and the Coors Light guest line talking NFL QBs. Saints are going to have a new QB among other teams. We think Dak will stay with the Cowboys. Have you heard how Jay Glazer talks about Ben Roethlisberger and Ben's idea of a workout is beer and barbecue and a yoga class once a week in the offseason? Have you?
I did hear that last year, yes.
All right. So walk me through Roethlisberger. I know he's had a chunk of the career where he's really good. People claim he's not good in December because he doesn't work out like he should. Where are you the last 3 or 4 years with Roethlisberger?
Yeah, I think starting in 2018, I think this is why people should value PFF. In 2018, he had over 5,000 passing yards, a ton of touchdowns, and we said this is the worst season he's had in 7 or 8 years because throw for throw, he was missing far more throws. That was 2018. 2019, plays 1 game, gets hurt, misses the entire season, and then this past year was legitimately his worst season that we've seen since 2006. So I think there's been a pretty steady decline with Big Ben, and I do think, what is making Tom Brady so special? Obviously, he wants to sell the TB12 method, but whether that method works or not, like he's keeping himself in shape, right? He hasn't lost arm strength. He hasn't lost durability. He hasn't missed a game, all of that stuff. That's why he could still perform at 43 years old, where historically quarterbacks drop off at 37, 38 years old. I mean, it's just Eli did it. Big Ben, Peyton at 39 was a shell of himself. So the fact that Brady and Breeze, at 40 years old, he was losing it a little bit physically, but he was so good at everything else he could still produce. The fact that a Brady or a Breeze has performed well into their 40s, I think is still the anomaly. It's still rare, and I think realistically, it's just so tough for these QBs to maintain their bodies and their consistency and stay durable unless you are 110% dedicated to what you're doing, right? And even more dedicated than you were 10 years ago because your body's just not ready to recover the same way. So I think we've seen a little physical decline with Big Ben. If that is because of his off-season workouts, those could easily be tied together, but it's just so tough for quarterbacks in their late 30s to maintain that level of consistency.
Steve Palazzolo on the Coors Light guest line, NFL Insider. Blake?
Steve, so talking about the Andy Dalton line and how
I love that, by the way.
Like you said, the NFL teams are, for the most part, trying to find just a top 15 starter, right? And then if you can hit a higher one, obviously that's fantastic. How many quarterbacks in this draft, if you're the Eagles or the Cowboys, could you take that would be better than Dak Prescott?
1. I think you feel good about
Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, I would feel good about Trevor. I think so. The thing about drafting is again, it's like, so we do this analysis at PFF where you could have a guy, kind of hit his baseline, but there is a such thing as a ceiling. There is a such thing as a floor. And the thing about an NFL quarterback is you probably, once you have more information on him, you have a better idea of what his ceiling is after you've seen him. With college, there is that great unknown. So you're paying for a little bit of the unknown. There's always a chance that like Trey Lance could be the best quarterback in this draft. I think it's the fourth best chance, but there's a chance, right, that Trey Lance could be the guy. So that would be the one thing I would say. Like Trevor Lawrence looks like he's probably, get a shot at being better than Dak, but again, that could work the other way too. I think Zach Wilson has the second best shot, then Justin Fields, and then Trey Lance. So there's a chance any of those guys are better than Dak, but of course there's a chance that Dak's the best of all of them. So it's the great unknown when it comes to drafting QBs.
So based on that, you would say your odds are not in your favor to move off Dak Prescott if you're the Cowboys.
No, but you're weighing those odds against the money as well, right? You're weighing the odds of it's, if they had a shot at Zach Wilson or Justin Fields, you're weighing that plus his rookie contract and what you would get in addition. And again, quoting this Mike Tannenbaum, who was on our show yesterday, he said because Dallas waited to pay Dak Prescott, it might have cost them, say, a Byron Jones, right? So that's how those decisions are made. So it would be like, I have Justin Fields plus these two players at these positions, say, or this level of player at two other positions, or just Dak. Or you go back a few years and it's like, okay, I could let Zeke walk, which wouldn't hurt me, or I could have Dak and Byron Jones, and that would help me 1,000 times more than having Zeke, right? So that's how those decisions should be made. So you have to factor in the money for those rookie quarterbacks as well.
All right. Well, and we don't have time to get into it because we've only got a minute here, but Louis Riddick has claimed that you're just not a good personnel department if you can't pay a quarterback $40 million and still figure out a way to get 52 other guys underneath the cap with another $140 million. Just real quick, what are your thoughts there, Steve?
I mean, yeah, you should be able to, but like being a good personnel department does involve, exhausting free agency options and draft options and all that stuff. But honestly, there's not a whole lot around the league that have been consistently good, right? Have the Patriots been consistently good, or have they consistently had Tom Brady?
Exactly.
That's a fair question.
Okay, let me ask you real quick, 30 seconds. Who has it may be the Ravens, but who has the number one personnel department in the NFL right now?
I think the Ravens have done a really good job, yeah. They exhaust all options. The Patriots have been good too, but I think the Ravens, the Steelers have been pretty good, but I think Baltimore is kind of the pinnacle right now.
His podcast, PFF NFL Podcast, at PFF_Steve, PFF.com, Steve Palazzolo, NFL Insider on the Out of Bounds Show and the Coors Light guest line. Steve, have a great weekend, buddy. We'll talk next week.
All right. Thanks, guys. Always appreciate it.
See you, man. Steve Palazzolo, he's awesome. NFL QBs and Palazzolo. It's great every week since August. I think it saved us throughout August, September, and October for sure. Good grief. Live in the Bank Plus studio. If you're going to Mudbugs this weekend, crawfish and Coors Light. Now that's a winning combo. Also, we have we think we have college baseball with the Rebs and the Dogs this weekend. More on the way.